The rain hadn't started yet, but the air carried the weight of it, the kind of thickness that clings to your clothes and makes the night feel heavier than it should. Ethan, 34, tired from a long day at work, drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting against the open window. The highway was supposed to take him straight back to his small apartment in the city, but somewhere between the static-filled radio and the broken streetlights, the route twisted itself wrong. His GPS froze, the blue arrow stuck in place, refusing to move. That's when he saw it. A bright orange detour sign leaning at an awkward angle on the shoulder of the road. Behind it, an unmarked lane dipped into the trees, gravel crunching under the first few car tires that dared. No explanation, no workers, no flashing lights, just that tilted sign pointing him away from the known. He hesitated. For a moment, he thought about turning back, about finding another way, but the fuel gauge was low and the thought of burning another hour circling back through the storm made his chest tighten. He eased the wheel, the tires popping onto the gravel road, and the forest swallowed him whole. The deeper he drove, the stranger it became. Houses sat far back from the road, their windows dark, their siding sagging as if no one had lived there for decades. An old rusted car, half buried in weeds, leaned in the ditch. The road narrowed, curved, and soon it was little more than a path, hemmed in by trees so dense they nearly touched overhead. His headlights skimmed over signs he couldn't quite read, wooden boards with paint washed away by time. The smell of damp earth seeped into the car, stronger with every passing mile. He rolled the window up and locked the doors without thinking. Then, at the end of the road, he found it. The trees broke apart, revealing the black water of a wide river. The current was invisible, but the surface gleamed like polished glass under the fractured moonlight. At the riverbank stood a dock made of ancient, warped planks jutting into the darkness. And waiting at the dock was a ferry. It looked too old to still function. Wooden boards slick with rot, iron chains rusted to a deep reddish brown. But the lantern hanging from the mast burned steady, a pale flame dancing in the mist. Ethan slowed the car, engine humming nervously like it too didn't want to be here. He leaned forward, peering across the river, but the other side was hidden in fog. Just a strip of shadow, no lights, no bridge, no town. He muttered to himself, This can't be right. But the ferry waited, as if it had been expecting him all along. On the dock stood a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a long coat that hung like it was soaked through. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face, but Ethan could feel the weight of the man's gaze even through the glass of his windshield. The ferryman raised one gloved hand and gestured once, a slow, unmistakable beckon. Ethan's stomach knotted. His instincts screamed at him to turn the car around, to back up and floor it until the road spat him back out onto the highway. But his GPS flickered alive for a moment, the frozen arrow suddenly shifting, showing the road ahead as a continuation, crossing the river. This is the way home, the thought whispered unbidden in his mind. He killed the engine, opened the door, and stepped out into the cold, damp air. Gravel crunched under his boots as he approached the dock. The lantern flame swayed in the breeze, painting the ferryman's shadow long and crooked against the planks. The river whispered. He swore he heard voices under the water. And the ferry, ancient and waiting, rocked gently as if eager for him to step aboard. The ferryman did not move as Ethan approached. He stood perfectly still at the edge of the dock, coat dragging just above the planks, hat brim dripping with mist. Ethan cleared his throat, his voice sounding smaller than he intended. Hey, do you run this thing? Is it working? No answer. Just the steady creak of the ferry as it nudged against the dock. The ferryman raised one hand, palm open. At first, Ethan thought he wanted money. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his wallet, fumbling it open. I don't know what the fare is. I've got some cash. The ferryman shook his head once, slow and deliberate. The gloved hand remained outstretched. Ethan's chest tightened. "What do you want then?" The ferryman stepped forward. His boots made no sound on the wood, no splash where the planks sagged under his weight. Ethan took an instinctive step back, but the ferryman moved with uncanny swiftness, seizing his wrist with cold fingers. The world tilted. Ethan gasped, staggered. Memories rippled in his mind like pages torn from a book. He smelled the grass of his childhood backyard, heard the bark of his first dog, Baxter, a golden retriever who slept at the foot of his bed, who greeted him every morning with sloppy kisses. Then it was gone, like smoke whisked away by the wind. Ethan blinked rapidly, trying to hold on to the name, but it slipped through his grasp. He knew he had a first pet. He knew it had been important, that it had been everything to him. But the image, the sound, the love, gone. The ferryman released his wrist. Ethan staggered back, clutching his head. "What the hell did you just do to me?" His voice cracked in panic. The ferryman only turned, silent, and walked onto the ferry. The planks groaned under his weight, yet he seemed weightless, like a shadow pretending to wear a man's shape. He took his place at the helm, hands resting on the great iron lever. The lantern's flame brightened. The ferry lurched away from the dock. The water was black as ink, perfectly smooth, except for the wake trailing behind them. The fog curled low across the surface, swallowing sound, muting everything except the creak of ropes and the dull splash of unseen currents. Ethan stood near the railing, knuckles white against the rotted wood, his heart hammered. "Where are you taking me?" No response. "You can't just take something out of my head like that. I didn't agree to anything." Still silence. Then, beneath the silence, whispers. At first, Ethan thought it was the wind threading through the mist, but the more he listened, the more certain he became. Voices. Dozens. Hundreds. Rising from beneath the ferry. They pressed against the water's surface, faces, blurred and distorted, features bending with the current. Their mouths opened and closed as if screaming, but the whispers reached him anyway, threading into his mind. "Ethan. Ethan." He stumbled back from the railing, pulse racing, throat dry. He dug his phone from his pocket, the screen glowing a faint blue in the dark. For a second, he had bars. He opened his contacts, scrolling, his mother's number, his girlfriend's number. But when he tapped his mother's name, the screen went blank. Not her number. Not even a saved contact, just empty. He felt his stomach drop. The ferry creaked, chains rattling as it cut through the mist. And when he looked back at the ferryman, the man was staring directly at him for the first time. The brim of his hat couldn't hide the pale, unnatural stillness of his face. Ethan shivered and turned away, but he couldn't stop trembling at the realization. That wasn't payment. That was a toll, and the ferry was only halfway across the river. The ferry drifted deeper into the fog, the lantern flame at its mast burning like a pale star swallowed by endless gray. Ethan pressed his back to the railing, chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. His mind reeled, clawing at the hollow space where memories used to live. What was his dog's name? What color had its fur been? The harder he tried to recall, the more it slipped away until the hole left behind felt raw, aching. He turned sharply toward the ferryman. "Give it back," he demanded, his voice cracked. "Whatever you took, give it back." The ferryman did not speak. He only raised that gloved hand again, palm outstretched. Ethan shook his head violently. "No! No way!" But then the ferry slowed. The chains creaked, the current grinding against the hull until the boat shuddered to a halt. They were in the dead center of the river now, mist on all sides, no shore visible. The ferryman took a single step toward him. Ethan's legs locked in place. He wanted to run, to leap into the water and swim back to land, but something in the air around the ferryman pinned him down, cold, suffocating, immovable. The hand extended again. This time, when it touched his temple, the loss was immediate. His chest lurched forward with a strangled gasp as another thread of memory tore loose. A face, his mother's, smiling at him from the kitchen table. The warmth of her hands as she brushed his hair back on the first day of school. Her voice, calling him by a nickname only she used. Gone. The emptiness expanded inside him. He tried to hold the image, to cling to the shape of her, but it slid through his grip like sand. All that remained was a phantom ache where love had once been. The ferryman lowered his hand. The ferry moved forward again. Ethan staggered to the edge, gripping the rail, nausea churning in his gut. He looked down at the black water and instantly regretted it. The whispers were louder now. Faces pressed harder against the surface, skin pale and eyes dark, mouths opening wider as if straining to break through. "Help us," one of them whispered. The sound was faint but sharp, slicing through his skull. "Join us," another moaned. Then he heard his name. Not once, not twice, a chorus. "Ethan, Ethan, Ethan." Dozens of voices in unison bubbling up from the depths. His skin crawled, his pulse pounding in his ears. "No," he muttered. His voice trembled. "No, no, no." His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with shaking hands. The screen lit up with a flood of missed texts. His girlfriend, Amanda. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? I'm worried. Call me." Relief surged through him. Something real, something to anchor him. He fumbled to hit call, but the letters warped. Her name melted into nonsense characters. The messages faded into static across the screen. By the time he blinked, the phone was blank. His last link to the outside world. Gone. He gripped the phone until his knuckles whitened, then hurled it into the river. The splash echoed far too loud in the mist. When the ripples cleared, faces surged toward the spot, mouths wide, whispering in triumph. The ferryman remained silent at the helm, watching, waiting. Ethan turned back toward him, panic sharpening into rage. "What do you want from me?" His voice cracked, desperate. "Why me? Why here?" The ferryman didn't answer. He only raised his hand again. The toll wasn't over. The ferry rocked gently beneath his feet, the mist curling closer, wrapping Ethan in a choking veil of damp air. Every breath tasted like the river. The ferryman stood motionless at the helm, one hand resting on the iron lever, the other raised in silent demand. "No," Ethan whispered, shaking his head. His throat was raw, his voice thin. "You're not taking anything else. You hear me? You're not!" The ferryman lowered his hand and took a step forward. Ethan staggered back, nearly tripping over the warped boards. "Stay away from me!" He reached into his pocket instinctively, keys useless. He pulled one out anyway, brandishing it like a weapon. His voice cracked as he shouted, "I'll fight you if I have to!" The ferryman tilted his head, slowly, patiently. The lantern flame above them dimmed as though starved of air, and then the boat stopped moving. The stillness was worse than motion. The river seemed to tighten around them, the water swelling higher against the sides of the ferry. From beneath came a sound, knocking, fists pounding from below the surface. Whispering voices surged into anguished cries. "Let us out! Trade! Trade! Give us more!" Ethan's knees buckled under the pressure of it. He clapped his hands over his ears, but it didn't help. The voices wormed through bone, through thought. His skull rattled with them.
"Stop it!" he screamed. "Just stop!"
The ferryman approached. His boots didn't strike the planks. They didn't make a sound at all. The mist clung tighter to his shape, as though the river itself wrapped around him. Ethan fell back against the railing, shaking his head, wild-eyed.
"Please, I'll pay you. Cash, anything. I'll give you my car. Just take me back."
The ferryman stopped inches from him. For the first time, Ethan saw the man's face clearly beneath the brim of the hat. It was pale, unnaturally so, like wax left too long in the sun. The eyes were pits of shadow, bottomless, and the mouth, stitched shut with black thread, puckered and scarred. Ethan's breath froze in his throat. His body screamed to run, but he couldn't move. The ferryman lifted his hand again.
"No,"
Ethan whispered.
"not again."
He shook his head violently, pressing his back against the railing until it groaned under his weight.
"You can't take more from me. You can't."
The gloved fingers touched his temple, and the world unraveled. A flood of warmth and love surged in him for a heartbeat. Amanda, smiling across the table during their first date, her hand brushing his, the smell of her perfume when she leaned in close, the sound of her laugh echoing in his ear. The promise they had whispered to each other, someday, a house, a family. And then, nothing. Her face, her voice, her name, gone. The ache hollowed him out, sharp and bottomless. He opened his mouth to call for her, to scream her name, but no sound came. He couldn't remember the shape of it anymore. The ferryman withdrew his hand. Ethan collapsed onto his knees, gasping, clawing at the boards as if he could dig the memories back out of the wood. His chest hitched with sobs he didn't recognize. The tears fell for someone he could no longer picture. When he looked up, the fog thinned, just enough to show the far shore ahead. Shapes stood there, waiting. A crowd of shadows, unmoving, staring with hollow eyes. The ferry began to move again. Ethan forced himself to his feet, clutching the railing. His heart pounded, terror rooting itself in every vein. He turned back to the ferryman, desperate.
"Please,"
he croaked, voice hoarse.
"I'll do anything. Just don't take any more, please."
The ferryman tilted his head once more, the stitched mouth twitching as though straining against the black thread. He raised his hand one last time. Ethan screamed, stumbling backward, but there was nowhere left to go. The river on one side, the endless shore of shadows on the other. The toll wasn't finished. The lantern's glow dimmed to an ember, flickering weakly as the ferry cut the last stretch of water. The whispers beneath the surface rose into a chorus, hundreds of voices clawing at Ethan's mind, begging, mocking, demanding. He clutched the railing with trembling hands, body shivering with cold that had nothing to do with the river. His memories were unraveling, threads of his life scattering into nothing. His childhood, his friends, Amanda, all hollow echoes now, fading faster with each breath. The ferryman stood above him, hand poised like a judge waiting for the final verdict. "No more," Ethan whispered. His voice cracked, thin as paper. "Please, there's nothing left to take." But there was. There was always one last toll. The ferryman pressed his palm to Ethan's forehead. The emptiness tore through him like fire. His chest heaved, lungs gasping for air that no longer mattered. His name, the very core of who he was, slipped free, dissolving into the black water. He clawed at it, tried to scream it aloud, but his lips only parted in silence. He was no one. A hollow. A shadow. The ferryman released him. Ethan sagged forward, barely able to stand. His body remained, but he was an empty vessel now, an echo without meaning. The far shore loomed, mist parting to reveal the waiting crowd. Figures lined the bank, still and silent, each one with sunken eyes and trembling lips. They whispered softly to one another, though no words formed. When the ferry touched the dock, they parted, leaving a narrow path up the shore. The ferryman stepped aside, gesturing toward them. Ethan's legs moved without command. Each step onto the dock felt heavy, as though chains dragged at his ankles. The crowd watched him pass, their whispers brushing against his mind like moth wings. One of us, one of us, one of us. He reached the shore and stopped. The river behind him groaned as the ferry drifted back into the mist, lantern swinging, ferrying nothing but silence. Ethan turned, and in the fog, at the far dock where his journey began, another traveler arrived. A man, confused and weary, stepping out of his car and onto the planks. The ferryman waited there too, shadow unmoving, hand already reaching for the toll. Ethan opened his mouth to warn him, to shout, to scream, but no words came. His voice was gone, his memories gone. There was nothing left but the endless whispering of the hollow crowd as they closed in, swallowing him among their ranks. The lantern's glow vanished into the fog. The river whispered, and the ferryman kept his eternal bargain. And so ends the story of Ethan, a man who thought he was simply taking a shortcut home, only to discover that some roads don't lead you back. They lead you over. The ferryman waits for all who wander too far into the mist, and his toll is never paid in coin. If you enjoyed this tale and want to hear more stories like it, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss the next descent into the unknown. Your support truly means the world. It helps a new channel grow, and every like, comment, and share keeps this archive of darkness alive. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done when the ferryman held out his hand? Until next time, beware the roads less traveled, and never ever step aboard if the ferryman is waiting.